Please tell me my baby isn't going to look like that.
Life is a funny old broad. She keeps you guessing.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, so I will tell you that story momentarily. Right now, I want to talk about getting pregnant, feeding the baby, excuse me, all that goes into it. It'll be short, it'll be fun, it'll be great. So, first thing I'm going to start with is breastfeeding. Now, you're sitting there going, Angela, I am not tuning in to the constrained view to hear about breastfeeding. But I've got a reason for talking about it. You see, when I got pregnant the first time, which was in, when did I get pregnant? When did I get pregnant? Well, it doesn't matter when I got pregnant. My first child was born in 1979, right before I turned 22. And it was a girl. And at the time, Lamaze classes were all the rage. And in Atlanta, there was a huge push to using birthing rooms. And there was only 2 doctors in all of Atlanta, 2 OB-GYNs that would use a birthing room. And they had set it up at the Douglas General Hospital out in Douglasville, Georgia, which from Forest Park to Douglasville was a bit of a trek. And when you're in labor, but people were willing to do it because the fathers could be in the room helping and all that sort of thing. This seems normal now, but trust me, at the time, it was not. And it was considered rebellious to want your husband in the room with you when you had a baby so you could squeeze his hand and call him names and scream. And then as soon as it's over, say, "Oh, looks just like you." I didn't get to do all that because my body does not go into labor. I ended up having to have 2 C-sections. Those are whole nother stories, and I'm not going to tell you about that today. But in the meantime, I took the Lamaze classes because I didn't know my body wasn't going to go into labor. And there were these people with us, other couples, and all this sort of thing. And I don't know. I didn't think I was ever going to need it. And my body was telling me pretty much that I was never going to need these classes. But after the baby is born, how do you feed it? Well, I wanted to breastfeed because that was healthiest for the baby. And even then, back then, breastfeeding was considered radical, man. It's just radical. My husband said, "Are you sure you want to breastfeed?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, not only is it better for the baby," I know he was thinking about himself and how it was going to hurt his fun he was having with the milk bags later, but I said, "It's also cheaper." He goes, "What do you mean cheaper?" I said, "Well, have you ever priced formula?" He said, "No." Well, I gave him the prices of it. He goes, "Yeah, you're breastfeeding." We wanted to save money, and we saved a lot of money. And the group that was helping to educate women about breastfeeding was called the La Leche League, the Milk League, if you will. It was great. It was wonderful. Well, I just recently saw on Facebook this post. It was called the 2 Pennies Post. I don't know who that is, but they wrote something about breastfeeding and monkeys. And monkeys, they don't usually go out and buy formula. It says in 2008, a woman by the name of Katie Hind, she was a researcher of some sort, stood in a California primate lab staring at hundreds of milk samples. Male babies got richer milk. Females got more volume. Science had missed half the conversation. This was her conclusion. She was a postdoc researcher at the California National Primate Research Center, analyzing milk from rhesus macaque mothers. For months, she'd been measuring fat content, protein levels, mineral concentrations. The data showed something she hadn't expected. Monkey mothers were producing completely different milk, okay, depending on whether they'd given birth to sons or daughters. Sons received milk with higher concentration of fat and protein, more energy per ounce. Daughters received more milk overall with higher calcium levels. Now, pay attention to these next two sentences. The biological recipe wasn't universal, it was customized. In other words, all milk is not the same. Hind ran the numbers again. The pattern held across dozens of mother-infant pairs. This was not random variation. This was systematic. She thought about what she'd been taught in graduate school. Milk was nutrition, calories, proteins, fats, a delivery system for energy. But if milk was just fuel, why would it differ based on the baby's sex? Why would mothers, now this is a sentence that I'm very unhappy about. Why would mothers unconsciously adjust the formula? Now, number one, monkeys don't give thought to any of this. This is not part of their thought process, conscious or unconscious. They don't think about it. It's built in. It's something that's just built in. But no, they're trying to skew the reasons for these things. The answer shifted everything. Milk wasn't passive, it was a message. Hind had arrived at this question through an unusual path. She'd earned her bachelor's degree in anthropology from the University of Washington, then completed her PhD at UCLA in 2008. While most lactation research focused on dairy cattle or developing infant formulas, Hind wanted to understand what milk actually did in primate mothers and babies. Obviously, primates are more closely aligned with what happens in the human body, so it helps to study them. At UC Davis, she had access to the largest primate research in the United States. She could collect milk samples at different stages of lactation, track infant development, measure maternal characteristics. She could ask questions that had never been systematically studied, like, why do young mothers produce milk with more stress hormones, and so forth and so on. Now, my comment here was this was a great story, except for that sentence, that one question, why would mothers unconsciously adjust the formula? As if in their subconscious somewhere it said, oh, you're going to have a baby boy, you need to change your milk formula. Or, oh, you're going to have a baby. No, it's all hormone driven. But this process is what I commented. This process did not randomly evolve over time. It was created by Almighty God, the creator of all things. It is He who provided the varied milks to be made by the many and varied bodies in a variety of situations for next generations, also known as babies. It is a built-in process. It's a built-in process. And that's one thing about researchers and stuff like that. If they don't believe that there's a creator, they're not going to find a lot of answers to their questions that suits them. And I have a feeling that she probably doesn't believe in God or creator. But I bet you anything, if she was to start asking some of those same questions, like why is it there's more fat and protein for a male as opposed to a female that just gets more quantity but not as much fat and protein, so forth. I bet across the spectrum of lactating animals and humans, there may be this sort of process that's built in, because I can guarantee you, when I started nursing my daughter, my first child, my main concern, besides saving money and making it healthy for her, was, my God, when will my nipples stop hurting? And they hurt. But, they toughened up after a while, and then nothing could hurt them after that. Um, and when my second child, my son, came along, it didn't take near as long. Maybe because some of the toughness was already there, or maybe because I had 2 kids to worry about and had other things to think about besides that. But that's about the nursing situation. It's much healthier. It is absolutely much cheaper. And the kids are getting what they need. So I was very happy about that. Now, let's get back to the Lamaze classes, because this is where what started this video comes into play. There we all are, bellies out like this, and husband's sitting there telling us how to breathe, breathe, breathe. And the lady that was teaching the class, she goes, "Angela, you need to practice your breathing." And I looked at her and I said, "Why?" Everybody in that room stopped. And they looked at me. And she says, "Because you're going to be, needing to practice your breathing so that you can handle your contractions." I said, "No, my baby's not coming out that way." I'm telling you, my body was talking to me, and it was telling me that. The ladies in the room, they all went, "Oh!" Their husbands held them tighter, because here was this nut job of a 21-year-old saying, "No, I don't think my baby's coming out that way." And sure enough, neither one of them did. But I practiced anyway. I said, "Okay, I'll try and practice." And so that was it. And I knew it wasn't going to happen. Okay, so my water breaks. My husband and I go to the hospital, and I'm never going into labor. My body wants to, but nothing's happening. Nothing is happening. I'm not dilating. Nothing is happening. And when the doctor checked, he said, "You've dilated about," let me see if I can, he says, "about that much." And I said, "Well, what do you call that?" He said, "A judgment call." I said, "What does that mean?" He says, "It means the baby ain't coming out that way." So all these other ladies I know, they're coming in and out, they're having their baby, and they said, "Walk up and down the hall." My husband's walking me up and down the hall. Oh, my back is killing me and all this stuff. He says, "Well, let's walk by the window and look at the babies." I said, "Oh, okay." So we walk up to this window, and there's all these babies there, and this lady walks up and stands next to me. She happened to be in my class. And she goes, "Oh, hey." I said, "Hello." And she said, "What do you think about all the babies?" Well, I was horrified. I was horrified. And I said, "Well," she goes, "Oh, look at," I said, "Which one's yours?" She goes, "Oh, look right there." And she points to the ugliest child in that room. Conehead. Okay. You remember the Coneheads? Was it Saturday Night Live? Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin? The Coneheads? I kid you not. Little face, red, blotchy Conehead. And I saw the child, my eyes got really big, and I turned to my husband. Look, this is all pregnant hormone stuff that's speaking here, okay? All pregnant hormone stuff. And I said to him, "Please tell me my baby isn't going to look like that." Ah! And I'm hollering, and I'm grabbing his lapels, and I'm doing this, and the lady standing behind me, "Well, that baby is beautiful." "No, please tell me." My husband goes, and he takes me back to the room. If by chance all these many years later, there's somebody watching this video. Who is that woman? I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I would never do it if I'd have been in my right mind. But these pregnant hormones. And maybe then Sabrina doesn't really want to be made Juno. She might want to give that a little bit of thought, don't you think?
She treats you right. She surprises